Okay, we're gonna take a look at some ancient DNA research. And there's been an explosion of ancient DNA research. So I just want to do a quick review. This researcher in Sweden replied back to me about his aquatic ape research. And the basic idea is that modern humans are sort of a cognitive subset of our use of tools as hominins. So we develop tool use using our mirror neurons, and along with singing, and this was also tied in with developing bipedalism through hunting in the water, swimming, and I just sent him a reply about how that sort of fits in with the breathing techniques that our original human culture uses in terms of deactivating the diver's reflex by changing your blood pH, and that's the secret of the Wim Hof breathing. Let's see. Yeah, so I just did some quick breathing exercises and then just held my breath after exhale, and that's the secret to activating the vagus nerve, which then activates your adrenaline in the lower body. So you have to first activate your vagus nerve to activate the I think they call it like epinephrine, and then that activates the adrenaline. So then we get into what they're calling the Persian hub, for when the main first Africans left the main drive 60,000 years ago. They had to do a DNA study to figure out that the humans spent about 15,000 years hanging out in what they're calling the Persian hub, or the Persian plateau, also called the basal Eurasian hub. So it's right this area here. And so this is the basal Eurasian hub, and they no longer exist, but they were the basis for spreading. I mean, some of them do exist, but there was mainly three main migrations out of that basal hub area that they charted doing this DNA analysis. So one would be into East Asians, and that then became Native Americans, and then you have South Asians, and that would be what they're calling the East Eurasian core up here. And then down here is the West Eurasian core. That was then largely replaced by later groups. So that would be your Western hunter-gatherers, And so what's interesting about this is that basically just by studying the DNA, they figured out that the first big wave out of Africa just kind of hung out for 15,000 years right out of pretty close out of Africa. And they've hypothesized that this might have been due to climate conditions, or it could have been competition with the Neanderthals, but they basically just had to adjust to this was like the easiest area to live once they got out of Africa. And so 15,000 years is a pretty long time. And so then there was another expansion from 38,000 years ago. And so what did these people look like? The first Homo sapien, the main wave that left Africa 60,000 years ago. Well, this is what they call them, basal East Asians, or actually, they look like Africans because they're from Africa. So it makes sense. So then it took like 15,000 years in Asia to then develop the Asian characteristics of East Asia, the phenotypes or whatever. So it's pretty interesting that they figured this all out. So here you have the basal Persian Plateau, basal Eurasian core from 60,000 years ago to 45,000 years ago. And then it left, and you have the West Eurasian core and the ancestral Western hunter-gatherers, and then the East Eurasian core that is the oldest group in India, and then this spread all over, into Australia and East Asia, and then it combined for the steppes, the oldest hunter-gatherers, central hunter-gatherers. Okay, so that's what happened like 45,000 years ago. So this was the Dawkins earlier research. They didn't quite have all the DNA study done yet. So here he's saying this is the main author of the study. He's just saying how there was 3 main waves of expansion out of this Persian Plateau hub right out of 15,000 years. So he's saying that, they mainly went north, but the East Asian core and the West Eurasian core, and then this is the original West Eurasian core that got replaced. And so there was, once they kind of dispersed to the north and around here, they were separated from everybody else because of this desert area in the Middle East and Arabia. So over thousands of years, they, in their different locations, that's how they developed the distinct phenotypes of modern humans. Yeah, and so first when they first left the hub, they interacted with the Neanderthals then for like 5,000 years. So it basically took like several generations to sort of like absorb the Neanderthal populations into modern humans. So now like 40% of the Neanderthal genome exists in modern humans out of Africa. And every human out of Africa has like 2 to 3% Neanderthal DNA. So when they were in that hub, they were also mixing with Neanderthals. By mixing, I mean breeding. Okay, so here's another look at this Persian Plateau basal hub. So this is the core. 45,000 years ago, it kind of went off. So, but it was for 15,000 years. They just kind of hung out in this area. Okay, so they're realizing that this was a big deal for modern humans when we left Africa, is we kind of had a holding the area for 15,000 years. And now the ancient DNA science is so precise. They can track all these different populations. Now that brings us to a really fascinating study where they discovered that in Papua New Guinea, there's actually an earlier out of Africa migration by humans from 120,000 years ago, and that the Papua New Guineans have 2%, at least 2% of their genome is from this early. One of the features is the short stature of these early humans. So just like the pygmies and the San Bushmen are short to, they consider that to be a ghost hominin, an archaic ghost hominin in Africa. But now they're finding out, well, actually, whatever that ghost archaic, it no longer exists in Africa, but it survived in Papua New Guinea from 120,000 years up to 45,000 years ago when the modern humans went to Papua New Guinea. So it's really wild that they existed. They survived for, I don't know, 70,000 years, whatever, 75,000 years. Yep. Okay, so that's pretty amazing that you have this ancient. Well, we know the latest DNA science says that the pygmies and the San Bushmen split 220,000 years ago. So some of them left Africa 120,000 years ago. And then, this was a earlier version that never left Africa again. So that's what they called a ghost archaic Homo sapien or Homo hominin. Let's see. So 29 alleles, which would be phenotypes. And at least 2%. And they're calling it an extinct out of Africa split line. It's extinct except for it also mixed with Neanderthals in the Central Asian mountains of the Altai Mountains, which is pretty wild. So this doesn't get in the news at all. By news, I mean like YouTube videos. There's really not much about this at all. And the guy who led this study, he's from Estonia. He's got a couple videos about it. Oh, I thought I have. Let me update this. I should have some more. Oh yeah, see? Okay, so he did this video talk. He's like, look, you got the main line that left Africa 60,000 years ago. And that was after they split into East Africans, West Africans, and Central Africans, or so-called pygmies. But before that, you had this extinct out of Africa lineage that somehow got to Papua New Guinea, and it's this light blue color, and it's 2%, at least 2% of the Papua New Guinea genome. So it's somewhere between the Neanderthal Denisovans and the modern human leaving migration out of Africa. Okay, so now we move along, and let's see where we get. I already did that. Okay, so we'll do this next. Now what's the latest? They've found this ancient Australian DNA in South America, in the Amazon and northern Peru and central west Brazil. So this also does not get in the news much, but it was sometime around 20,000 years ago, 24,000 years ago. And they do not resemble East Asians, so they look like they're Australian or African phenotypes in the Amazon. So that's sort of like connected to what I just did. It just shows how the original human culture spread around the world. And so that brings us to, they're finding out that that basal Eurasian Persian hub then developed into farming about 10,000 BCE, and they've done the whole DNA on this. So what happened is that culture then spread to the lower Caucasus, and it mixed with the hunter-gatherers from the steppes, and that's how when you had that mix, that's how you developed the wagon wheel and the domestication of the horse and the wagon wheel and horse. And so that spread, that also, when that developed, it spread really fast as the Yamnaya culture. But you have these ancient, like, fertility goddess kind of statuettes from 8,000 BC when agriculture first develops. And what's really fascinating is that the wife of Yahweh was connected to this Asherah. It's connected to this ancient goddess worship. I won't go into the details because it gets kind of complicated, but you can basically trace it back to the same original human culture connection with the worship of the Elan bull. So I'm just saying it's all connected. And I'll just post the blog link on the. So this is from 8,000. This is from 6,000 years ago. I'll post the blog link on in the description, the video description. That's from, well, this is 8,500 years old, and this is 10,000 years old. So that's when agriculture was first developing. And so what's fascinating is that goddess worship was also found in the as it spread towards the Caucasus, the Caucasus Mountains. And so what they found is that there was actually like a back migration from the steppes. It migrated back down into this area. So this had Mesopotamian goddess influence back around 6,500 years ago. So these ring things. These are from that Sumerian and Babylonian goddess worship. So that's from 5,500 years ago. So let's see what else is worth mentioning. The basic point here is that you first had to have the farming culture spread up to the Caucasus to then create this like hybrid with the hunter-gatherers to then have the steppe domestication of the horse. But it also spread the Black Plague. They've done all the DNA on that, and that spread all across the steppe into East Asia and into Europe by the 3rd millennium, actually a bit earlier, as I will get into for the next. So here they had the plague, 3,000, so it's the 4th millennium, 3,300 BC. And what's really interesting is that the farmers were patriarchal at this time, and they took on the steppe women. They incorporated the steppe women, but the farming culture itself was patriarchal, and that corroborates my claim about the plow-based farming being patriarchal. And then what happened was in Northern Europe, you had a decline. They call it the Neolithic decline from the plagues. The plague spreading between 5,300 years ago. So that's 3,300 BCE. We'll just leave it at that.